Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Access Climate Finance, the Commonwealth support mechanism to developing countries. Thank you all very much for attending today. We are still waiting for a couple of guests who will hopefully arrive in the next few moments or so. But may I, first of all, introduce the Commonwealth Secretary-General, Baroness Patricia Scotland QC.
Firstly, can I welcome you all very warmly and congratulate you for finding this room. It's quite clear that you are people of extraordinary intelligence, determination, and fortitude, because if you were not, you would not be here. Can I also welcome the two panelists who are with me. We have Russell Miles, who is the Director of Climate Mechanisms and Adaptation, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade Australia. I'm particularly grateful for Russell Miles being here because in 2015, he was one of the people who were pivotal in persuading Australia that this initiative was worthwhile. So I want you to be particularly pleased with whatever he says. And the second, hugely important, Ousman Jarju, who is the director of the Green Climate Fund, who has given us real support for this whole period. I am delighted to be here with you because we are at an extraordinary point in our history. I have just come back from visiting two of the islands in the Caribbean which have been dramatically affected by the recent hurricanes. I visited first Antigua and Barbuda and went by helicopter to the island of Barbuda. Many of us, for the last 30, 40 years, have been talking about the existential threat of climate change. That threat is evidenced by what I saw in Barbuda. Barbuda has basically been devastated. 80% of the houses no longer are fit for habitation, and the whole population had to be evacuated. That devastation was evident when I went to see the previous inhabitants of Barbuda in a shelter in Antigua. We had 1,200 people who had lost everything. When I was taken round the island, people were pointing out to me various places and saying, this used to be the police station. And this used to be our school. And this used to be the council building in which we deliberated our matters. And what was quite extraordinary is this was all just 2 months ago. And a whole livelihood, a whole way of living was put to an end. And then I went to Dominica, which is the land of my birth. And my country was almost unrecognizable. Every tree had been stripped even of its bark. They were naked. What you see in the pictures now is 2 months of growth, 2 months of regreening. However, when you fly in, instead of seeing lush green vegetation, you see brown, stark, dead land. But the destruction was very much like a bomb has hit it. Because what you will notice when you look at these photographs is the total destruction of many of the buildings. And the rubble that you see is actually all that is left of a whole house. One of the things that will stay graphically in my mind forever is the sight of a woman sitting in the middle of rubble. To the left-hand side of her was a fridge freezer. To the right-hand side of her was a bed, but that was the only things left of what had, moments before the hurricane hit, been her home. She had celebrated her son's 9th birthday in that house 3 days before, and it had been her pride and joy. 3 beautiful bedrooms, a wonderful veranda, a delightful kitchen and dining room, and a wonderful drawing room, with a fantastic corner veranda overlooking a panoramic view. Within 6 hours, everything that she had worked for in her whole life was gone. Every plate, every pot, every pan, every sheet was no more. And the only thing she, her husband, and her family walked away with was their lives. But they were grateful. And the reason they were grateful was because the MP, Miss Charles, pointed to a spot below that house which I thought was a dent in the road. And I was told that it wasn't a dent in the road. That was the spot where 3 houses used to be. 3 houses in which 14 people lived. And there was no sign of those 3 houses, not even the foundation stones, because the lady I was spoken to had a foundation and had 3 steps left of her house. The 14 people were gone, and so was their home, and there was no sign that any of them had ever lived there. I have never seen anything like I saw in Dominican Barbuda. This is the school in Barbuda. What you will see are the books and the debris left. So if anyone wants to ask, what does existential threat looks like? It looks like this. Total, utter devastation. Article 10 of the Commonwealth Charter, headed Protecting the Environment, reads as follows. We recognise the importance of the protection and conservation of our natural ecosystems and affirm that sustainable management of natural environment is the key to sustained human development. We recognise the importance of multilateral cooperation, sustained commitment and collective action, in particular by addressing the adaptation and mitigation challenges of climate change and facilitating the development, diffusion and deployment of affordable, environmentally friendly technologies and renewable energy, and the prevention of illicit dumping of toxic and hazardous waste, as well as the prevention and mitigation of erosion and desertification. That was in 2013. But you will remember that the Commonwealth has been making this plea since 1989. The Commonwealth was the first. The Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub responds to this collective understanding and to the need of mutual support. It helps our small and vulnerable member states to build capacity for assessing multilateral funds, such as the Green Climate Fund, as well as private sector finance. And access to such funding helps fill the gaps and overcome impediments that hinder countries in attaining their developmental goals and their objectives. The value of the Climate Finance Access Hub lies in the flexible and long-term deployment of climate finance experts who are linked to capacity development programs. And so these experts are able to help countries to deliver the aspirations that they've identified for themselves. And the hub aims to equip small and vulnerable states with the capacity to access urgently needed climate finance, which can enable them to adapt to the impacts of climate change, transition to low carbon economies, and attain the sustainable development goals. Now, there has been immediate and significant demand for the services offered by the hub, which is in its first year has become established as a prominent global contributor in the sphere of climate finance. But this summer, the hub has never been more needed and more valued by those who've had the benefit of it. The long-term programmatic support made available by the appointment of international experts in country as national advisors is being widely commended, including their work to build the absorptive capacity. And it's been pleasing to see that for once we've been ahead of the game. 18 Commonwealth countries, mainly LDCs and SIDS, have requested technical support and deployment of national advisors, and to date, 7 national advisors have been deployed in LDCs and in SIDS, including some of the climatically vulnerable countries like Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Jamaica, Mauritius, Namibia, Swaziland, and Vanuatu. And just in case we think it is only the Caribbean which has been affected, I'm sure all of you will remember that we had mudslides in Sierra Leone. We had flooding in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India, where thousands in Asia died, and even more thousands were displaced. And then, just in case, the Pacific thought for once they were blessedly going to be left out, poor Vanuatu was hit again. The Ring of Fire was relighted, and 6,000 people had to be moved. And we had Ophelia in Northern Ireland and orange skies in London. So there is no part of our Commonwealth which can say this is not about me. It's about all of us. And the representatives of some of the countries who have been participating in this effort are here today, and I hope they will be kindly sharing with us the experiences of the support being received through the Climate Finance Access Hub programme and from the national advisors. The national advisors are involved in a whole range of technical support and capacity building activities depending on the national priorities of the countries to which they've been deployed. An institutional development relating to understanding of climate finance requirements, the development of policies and climate investment strategies, and the development of implementable and bankable climate change projects are emerging as the key focus for national advisors' technical support activities. And arising from this work, we're already seeing project proposals from some countries, and these will be developed in readiness for submission to climate finance institutions. So deployment of additional national advisors will soon be accomplished, and to expand yet further the operational scope of the Climate Finance Access Hub. And we really are immensely grateful to the range of partners and other supporters for enabling us to reach the present stage of delivery. Generous financial support from the Government of Australia has enabled the hub to become operational. But I just want to put out a plea for all of you who may be burdened by money. There is an opportunity for you to relieve yourselves of that heavy burden and help us to deliver the change that we need to see. So similarly, in-kind contributions and support from the government of Mauritius have been instrumental in setting up the central office for the hub in Port Louis. And there has also been institutional support from many other developmental partners and regional organisations, and this really has considerably enhanced the impact and results of the hub and the support functions. And such support and the degree of progress made is really pleasing. But the challenges absolutely remain, because we know the level of loss and damage is likely to increase, and the rapidity and the ferocity of these climatic assaults are going to do the same, and demand, therefore, for the services which already exceeds the available program resources is bound to grow. And we need to mobilize, therefore, further resources to extend the reach, ensure that future viability of the hub, and to establish regional spokes which are components in the design of this initiative. And we invite developmental partners to join us in helping more countries to access climate funds and to make implementation of the national climate action possible. We have an opportunity of our generation. I've said earlier that this is our fight. And if it is not we who find the solution to this problem, then who? Because human genius has got us into this problem, and human genius will have to get us out. So it is our job. There is no more time to say when. The time is now, and the people to do it is us. And therefore, I want to thank not only the panelists who are about to speak, but I want to actually thank each and every one of you for what you have already done to make this challenge easier. But I want to give you a very special thank you for what you will do after today to make sure that we deliver the solutions that are necessary. And on those days when you will think in the future, why on earth did I ever do this? I want you to remember the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, representing 52 countries and 2.4 billion people, said thank you in advance.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Before we go any further, if I can tempt you to stay right to the end, not only will it be fantastic dialogue in a few moments, and all the way through, of course, you have a chance to ask questions too, but there will be refreshments at the end, and we'll be having some finger food, and I hope you'll stay with us. So can I introduce to the stage Russell Miles, who's the Director of Climate Mechanism for Australia. Thank you very much, Mr. Miles.
Thank you very much. Yes, my subject, my title is very weird, Mechanisms and Adaptation section. It's basically finance and adaptation, which is, I don't know why it's called that. But anyway, thank you for having me, Madam Secretary General, fellow participants, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Secretary General, I think those images that you brought in, that story is quite amazing and sobering to see those images, because you don't really often have the chance to see that level of detail. Thank you for bringing that to us. It certainly reminds us all of why we are here in this conference for these 2 weeks, and what we're hoping to achieve to stop that type of devastation from continuing and getting worse. And I'm not sure how I can compete with those images, actually, but anyway, we'll talk about it. So, so anyway, good afternoon, everybody. So, Australia is a strong supporter of the Commonwealth, as you know, and as a founding member, we've had a clear historical and political commitment to the organisation since its very formation. And today we're working towards a new, renewed Commonwealth that is effective and relevant as possible, and we're looking forward to the Commonwealth meeting in April next year in London. We see climate change as a major global challenge where the Commonwealth can actually make a real difference. Australia has a strong track record of supporting the needs of states most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, and especially amongst our Commonwealth colleagues and partners. Through our climate support, our advocacy and climate negotiations for the special circumstances of small island developing states and LDCs, including our neighbours in the Pacific and our friends in the Caribbean who, as we've seen, have so recently suffered the terrible impacts of these major hurricanes. Also, as co-chair of the Green Climate Fund, Australia is committed to supporting vulnerable development countries and continuing to advocate for their enhanced access and readiness through that fund. As Madam Secretary-General mentioned, I was with our Prime Minister in Chogum in Malta in 2015, and at that time, and still am responsible for the team that looks after our climate finance money, and we were able to work with the Prime Minister's office to announce our contribution to the Climate Finance Access Hub, and we were on our way to Paris, and this was his first announcement actually of that sort of announcing season that Paris became, but this was our first and our sort of most proud, I think, to be really involved in this initiative. It was only $1 million commitment initially, and we're very much looking forward to hoping that others are bringing their resources, whether it be money, skills, capabilities to this effort. Also, I should mention that our head of mission in Port Louis is on the steering committee for the hub, and she's very actively engaged and enjoys the work of the hub and being involved at that level. I think so. 2 years ago, we were in Malta trying to launch this and get it started, and it's I think incredible to see in such a short time and just over the last year to have been able to mobilise these 17 requests for national advisors, which is the heart of this work, and already seeing them deployed to 7 countries, and as well as further 5 advisors, I understand, in advanced stages of deployment. We also see a number of requests that shows that the strength of interest and confidence in the hub's work and the need for that work. And I think that was a big question we had in Malta. Everybody had, do we need this? Is it going to help? Is it something that's not already covered by others? And I think we answered those questions while we're thinking about our commitment to the hub. And I think the hub has shown that, yes, they are filling a very, very important gap in what is needed to help SIDS and LDCs to access the climate finance that is out there. So I do encourage other Commonwealth members and global partners to join with us in this effort to help support the hub in, as I said, in either way that we can, so that we can make sure that we can continue to request and be able to request for advisors that are going out to work with the governments. I also think it's important to think about the Commonwealth a little bit more broadly. It's important that we as Commonwealth stand together in these various international forums to advocate for the unique challenges faced by SIDS and LDCs around climate change. We were very pleased to be in Malta and help create the climate statement issued by the Commonwealth of the eve of the Paris conference in 2015. For us, it was a really important marker in our efforts to build consensus and ambition in that conference, to have seen so many Commonwealth countries come together across the traditional negotiating divide and come up with a very strong statement in that lead up to Paris. I think that was incredibly important milestone in that work. But I do think there's more that we can do together and keep using that Commonwealth membership's influence through the other bodies that happen, not just in the Paris, in the UNFCCC. And for example, so over 40, I'm reading statistics, sorry, but over 40 G77 countries are members of the Commonwealth. More than half the Commonwealth countries are members of the non-aligned movement, 5 members of the G20. Commonwealth members make up 1/3 of the African Union in the East Asia Summit, 1/4 of APEC, and a majority of Pacific Island Forum and Caribbean Community. I mean, those are huge numbers of groups and different forums that the Commonwealth can work together in to influence and to make change, as I said, across, I think, what we see as sort of traditional boundaries in the UNFCCC process, but we see that all these other forums where we're actually working together, incredibly important to continue to do that. I think that the Commonwealth working together on climate change, helping countries, helping each other, pushing climate advocacy, policy for change. All those things are issues that we can do together, and we look forward to your leadership, Madam Secretary. We think together we can contribute to the most pressing issues of today, climate change being one of the most important, and I look forward to our discussion after other panelists have spoken. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed, Mr. Miles Russell. Thank you very much. And also thank you, Australia, for supporting this invaluable initiative. May I now call on Mr. Ashwin Ruhi, the First Secretary of Mauritius, a small state where there is a long-term climate finance access hub.
Thank you. Baroness Patricia Scotland, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Excellencies, Mr. Miles, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it was supposed to be my Minister, Honourable Sinatambou, who was supposed to be here. He sends his apologies. He deeply regrets that he couldn't make it due to unforeseen circumstances. We had to, he couldn't make it. Having said this, so I've been delegated to make the statement on his behalf. So it gives me a great pleasure to be in your midst today for the high-level event on accessing climate finance, the Commonwealth support mechanism to developing countries in the context of COP23. On behalf of the government of Mauritius, I wish to extend my profound gratitude to the Commonwealth Secretariat for co-hosting this side event together with Mauritius. I understand that the objectives of this event are to discuss climate finance and to provide a forum to share experiences on financing climate change initiatives, including the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, which is being hosted in Mauritius since September last year. The Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub was officially endorsed by the CHOGM at the summit held in Malta in November 2015. The hub is a new institutional development initiative, and it is reckoned as a major step forward in enabling access to financial as well as technical resources aiming towards enhancing resilience against adverse impacts of climate change in smaller states, including LDCs, countries in Africa, and other vulnerable countries which are members of the Commonwealth. The hub works as a network of practices linked to various robust networks which share the same purpose of enhancing access to climate funding. The hub bears testimony of a dynamic South-South cooperation that will deliver much needed absorptive capacity in small and vulnerable countries. I wish to acknowledge that the hub has been in the forefront in developing nodes in Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific regions. In fact, the activities of the hub are being reported to the Commonwealth, to the CHOGM through the Commonwealth Secretariat. Mauritius prides to host the hub and takes the opportunity to set a good example and setting a benchmark of best practices and lessons for Commonwealth member states, amongst others, to access climate finance and capacity building. Since its launching, some 17 requests from Commonwealth member states have been received and technical assistance have been deployed. Several other member states have also indicated greatest interest in the hub's program. This clearly shows the key role being played by the hub towards strengthening capacities in member countries, in building their resilience to the impacts of climate change, transitioning to a low-carbon development pathway, and moving towards the realization of the 2030 SDGs. Accessing finance as well as capacity development to implement the Paris Agreement is one of the most important enabling conditions for vulnerable countries. The backbone of the Paris Accord is the global target of keeping global average temperatures from rising 2 degrees Celsius, with efforts to reduce it further to way below 1.5 degrees Celsius. It is our firm belief that the hub will definitely continue to play a key role in helping these countries, including Mauritius, to enhance their capacities in both project formulation and accessing finance for climate action. As part of the Paris Accord, developed countries parties have pledged to provide $100 billion per year in terms of support to the developing countries by 2020. This presents an opportunity to mobilize support and resources and partnerships for the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub. We acknowledge the support of Australia in operationalization of the hub and would welcome such funding opportunities from other countries. Along this line, the hub is mandated to ensure capacity development of these vulnerable countries and is intended to facilitate long-term unlocking of access to means of implementation of climate-related programs and measures, including nationally determined contribution through capacity building, technology transfer, and access to finance. The NDC portfolio is estimated at $5.5 billion, of which is earmarked at $4 billion for adaptation and $1.5 billion for mitigation actions to be realized by the year 2030, in part of Mauritius' efforts in addressing and providing solutions to the problem of climate change. For this specific purpose, the hub places long-term advisors at regional and national levels within SIDS, LDCs, and other countries in Africa to support national efforts to access and effectively use international climate finance. The focus is on supporting national priorities for climate action through South-South cooperation, exchange, and mutual learning. The role of a national climate finance advisor is to primarily provide strategic and technical guidance on mobilizing climate finance to implement the Mauritius nationally determined contribution and other climate-related projects. The National Climate Finance Advisor, together with the staff of the Climate Change Division at the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, are presently supporting climate change activities and programs, as well as overseeing their respective implementation. In addition, the National Climate Finance Advisor will also help in enhancing the skills and expertise of staff of relevant ministries, departments, and other organizations to undertake the formulation of climate funding proposals and subsequently manage the program or the project. The advisor is also expected to interact closely with the work of the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub and to share reports, findings, and materials with the General Manager, who is also based in Mauritius. The main responsibilities of a National Climate Finance Advisor in Mauritius include the following. Firstly, assisting in project proposals development in response to relevant climate finance funding envelopes, which includes identifying priorities in developing bankable projects with robust climate components, providing technical advice on sources of funding, and carrying out technical analysis of project proposals. Secondly, enhancing coordination of cross-ministerial efforts to operationalize the nationally determined contribution and other climate-related projects, such as the Green Climate Fund Readiness Program, the formulation of a national adaptation plan for Mauritius, and project proposals for submission to the Africa Climate Change Fund. Thirdly, strengthening capacity development of relevant ministries, departments, and other organizations to undertake and manage the various tasks associated with the formulation, application and submission of requests for funding under climate finance, but response to the requirements of climate finance donors. And lastly, contributing to the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, including collection of information and develop knowledge products, including handbooks, guidelines, manual newsletters, for use by counterparts and for dissemination to hub partners. Monitoring and evaluation of a project will take place during the course of its implementation. The National Climate Finance Advisor has provided an inception report after the first 1.5 months of commencing, and followed by 6 monthly progress reporting, supported by supplementary information to the COMSEC as required, as well as to the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development. It is to be highlighted that the Commonwealth Secretariat attaches particular importance to the transfer of expertise and knowledge to counterparts. A training program for key counterpart staff is being prepared and will be discussed and agreed at the level of the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development. As part of his assignment, the National Climate Finance Advisor is expected to actively support the COMSEC's gender equality policy and youth-focused policies and programs. These policies provide mandate and frameworks for realizing the Commonwealth's commitment to mainstreaming gender equality, equity, people with disability, and youth empowerment into all its policies, structures, systems, and operations. It is intended to strengthen and guide the collective effort of all Secretariat staff to ensure that women, men, girls, and boys benefit equally from their work. Baroness Patricia Scotland, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to conclude by quoting the Prime Minister of Fiji, His Excellency Mr. Bainimarama. I quote, "The Commonwealth continues to play a leading role in global affairs. The wonderful thing about the Commonwealth is the strength we all derive from our ability to share our experiences and learn from each other." End of quote. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I also sort of welcome to this event Mr. Dr. Patrick Ignatius Gomez, who is the Secretary General of the African, Caribbean and Pacific Groups. You're very welcome, sir. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and I hope you'll make a contribution to the debate later in this programme. Our final speaker for the panel right now is Bilal Anwar, who is with the Commonwealth Secretariat. He's a Climate Finance Access Hub Director. Mr. Anwar.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. I'm not the director, but the general manager for the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, based in Port Louis, Mauritius. First of all, thank you very much for Mauritius for hosting me there and the hub there. And what I can assure you is we are absolutely enjoying our time and the work there. Now, assuming you all know about the hub now, the Secretary General have given a very good introduction, and as well as from the participant from Australia. So I am not going to go into the details of introducing, but just to highlight and share some of the experiences which we are accumulating and which we are gathering right now. The status of the hub right now, of course, is we are fully operational, we are fully functional. We have the list of 17 countries now, and the 7 national advisors are already deployed. And the average timing, I can say comfortably, is now they are there for last 6 months. Some of them, there are more than 6 months, but I think we can average it out around 6 months. I know this is not the decent or the comfortable time period to draw any conclusions. But nevertheless, as a part of national advisors, is the constant reporting is one of the key component of it. And we are very minutely reviewing the information which we are receiving, because that information is extremely valuable in terms of turning and transforming that information into different information and knowledge products, and then sharing it with other national advisors. So the 7 national advisors actually, they are in many different countries. I mean, although they all are in very similar in their characteristics when it comes to the climate change impacts, but at the same time they have the physical distances, and the countries have, of course, some different national priorities. But the national advisors have become a very small community under the guidance of the hub, and we see that we have provided them some communication tools and channels, and we see them there's a constant information flow happening. And we are from the center in Mauritius, we are observing and taking this information into a consideration. So we've been able to gather some experiences which I would like to share. Before doing that, let me just take an opportunity just to give a very brief kind of overview that what is happening in the overall global climate finance space. We all know that, and you might have experience in this COP23 as well. There's a lot of events going on finance. The finance is bitterly debated and negotiated in so many different contact groups and negotiation streams. Actually, somebody was telling me there are 6 right now going on under the SBI, Substar, APA, and you name it. So this is one of the hot topic, which is one of the important topic in order to implementation of the Paris. What we are seeing is, yes, there is a scale of financing which is, of course, available under the different funding mechanisms, and the funding, of course, is available to the developing countries. But while the scale of the funding is going up, I think the complexity to access that finance is going up at a much greater scale. And that's why how we have actually, and those people actually, it's not my role, but those people who have come up with the idea of the Commonwealth Climate Finance Hub, they have actually realized this and they have internalized this in a very thoughtful manner. So, but some of the good things which we are observing right now is, especially we see at the ground level, the convergence. There's a convergence of climate action which is taking place. We see the lot of action which is coming in the INDC or NDC frameworks, and which is actually a very good thing, because INDC, it has evolved right now to be one of the most recognized and widely implemented legal instrument. And when we are actually negotiating, we are interacting with our Commonwealth member countries in order to define the terms of reference and define the work priorities of our national advisors. We see that there is an increasing tendency that they want to converge the action, and they want to have the action toward the implementation of their INDC. And the biggest challenge which they are facing is the financing, because what we saw that the countries have the ambitions, and much more ambitions actually which were expected. I know that you all are referring, and many of us are talking about the emission gap, the report which came out. But what we're seeing is there is quite a lot of ambition from the developing countries, and the biggest hurdle, the biggest challenge which they are facing is the financing. So the one positive outcome which we are experiencing is the convergence of the climate action into the INDC framework. Now the second is that the most of the developing country, and I would say that, and would like to emphasize here, the most of the small island developing states, they would like to fashion their action, and they want to learn from each other. Because what they have realized that either is in the space of the mitigation, or in order to take the adaptation measures, or if they want to import and implement the cleaner technologies in order to have the energy security. The solutions which they have been trying, and they've been coming from different other corners of the world, have not really worked very well. So this kind of learning from each other, South-South dialogue, and the knowledge sharing and the information sharing is turning out to be a very, very critical component. Now, the third component which I would like to highlight is the institutional strengthening. We know that the capacity building, capacity assessment programs been going on in the climate change arena since the beginning, and we still see the capacity gaps. I mean, of course, there's one big reason is the policy itself has been evolving, and that actually have been bringing a lot of new obligations and new challenges to the developing countries. But at the same time, I think we should be frank enough to accept that most of the capacity assessment and capacity development program has not been able to deliver, and because they were designed on a very short-term basis, and in our negotiation, our interaction with the countries, they were actually wanted and they want to have the program which are slightly more long-term, they are more sustainable, and the focus is on institutional strengthening. And that's exactly what is the focus. That's how the design and the work program of the Climate Finance Hub has been designed. So our national advisors, they actually, instead of straight away and going on the ground, start working on developing the projects, they actually work with institutions, and they actually try to engage with the local institutions across the board and bring the capacity and the strengthening of the institutions. So the logic, of course, behind is that even when the national advisors, I mean, they exit or they leave the country, the capacity which is developed, it stays there, and then the capacity is able to deliver for a long period of time. The other thing is one of the key area. I mean, the countries, of course, the countries on a different patterns and the different stages of the development, but identification of the potential sectors, and that has been a real challenge. There is a very broad picture understanding by the countries that they want to have the energy security, they want to secure the food security, and of course they want to have the access to the drinking water, because that's such a critical adaptation issue for them. So these are the 3-4 areas, in identification of the potential sectors, in institutional strengthening, and then this determination and this desire to learn from the countries who have the common characteristics and who are actually struggling with the same set of problems. Now, based on this, what the Commonwealth Climate Finance Hub has done is we have actually provided that space to our national advisors, and we have provided that space to our client countries as well. You have heard from Mauritius, and in the panel discussion, I hope you will hear a little more that how our national advisors are engaged with the countries, and they are actually working on the institutional strengthening and institutional development, and so the capacity actually remain. Now, of course, they are working on the project development, because in the climate finance funding is all project finance, project-based funding. So a big emphasis of our work is to develop projects and the implementable and the bankable projects, and sometimes it's become a real challenge to make this understanding across that what do we mean by bankable project and what do we mean by the implementable project, because the countries which are suffering with the climate change, adverse impacts of the climate change, any project is implementable and any project is a bankable project. But of course, the climate finance has actually borrowed the most of the terminology from the mainstream financial world, and that actually need to be somehow complied with. So we are trying to streamline and working with our partner from Green Climate Fund, from Adaptation Fund, from GEF, and several others, in order to get that understanding across, and in order to come up with the national circumstances and the national institutions who are able to comply with the projects. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Bilal, and thank you, panel. Now it's your turn. We have a roving microphone ready for your questions. We have a good 20-25 minutes to get your questions and hopefully some answers as well. Is there anybody that's willing to take the first question? Lady at the front, please. Would you identify yourself and tell us who you are and ask the question, please? Lady with the red jacket, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Melanie Hopkins. I am the head of the UK's network in the South Pacific. So 2 quick comments and a question. Firstly, well done to the panel. I think your presentation was really helpful in just reminding us that this is a baby, in a sense. This is a baby that's moved quite quickly, but this is still a baby in that the launch was in September, and there's clearly a lot of potential around the mechanism. And secondly, I would agree very much with the quote from the gentleman from the government of Mauritius, quoting the Prime Minister of Fiji, the Right Honourable Bainimarama, saying that the Commonwealth is indeed wonderful in this context because it is a natural hub for all of these conversations and exchanges of best practice and comparisons of strategies to come together. So on that basis, my question is a broader one about what can small island states expect from the upcoming summit on the area of climate and sustainability in general. Thank you.
Who would you like to answer that?
I guess that might be the Secretary General, but thank you.
Well, the theme for the upcoming summit is towards a common future. And one of the issues that we're going to be looking at is, of course, sustainability and climate change. It's a particularly important issue because, of course, 31 of the 52 states are small states. And as we've seen from the pictures that I brought, which could have been pictures from other countries too, this is a real existential threat. And so what we are seeking to do is to garner all of the knowledge, expertise about what works, but also what does not work. Because what we've also seen is many member states are trying to do similar things in similar ways. They're making very sensible and well thought out plans, which they hope will succeed. And many of them are doing it in a very almost identical format. The one problem is it doesn't work. And they only find out it doesn't work after having tried it. And so we have a multiplicity of countries spending millions of pounds doing things which they validly believe will be helpful, but do not, in fact, work. And so we know that one of the things the Commonwealth can do is collate the things that do work and collate the things that do not. And having both, we have understood, is equally important. And people are often shy about sharing their failures and are happiest when they can talk about their successes. And what we are doing in the Commonwealth is garnering the failures, because there is no such thing as failure. It's just your cornerstone to your next success. And so we are doing that. You'll know that we are looking in April to see whether the Commonwealth can agree on a blue charter, because the Commonwealth is responsible for 78% of the world's oceans. And we have, in 2013, a Commonwealth Charter which is in relation primarily to land, although it speaks of oceans. And we now need to do just as much work in collating all the information that we need on oceans, so it's a mirror for our land, because there's a synthesis and a symbiosis between land and ocean, and we've been looking at them as two separate things. And so we are hoping the Commonwealth will shape a blue charter, and that blue charter is going to be spoken about now, but we hope it'll be deliverable by 2018 and the summit. The other thing we're doing, and we launched it last week in the technical meetings, was a Commonwealth toolkit, climate change toolkit, which will create the legal instruments that may be possible to implement the Paris Agreement in a way that will make the outcomes solidified in the national frameworks. And that is very much speaking to the fact that most of our countries do not have sufficient legal draftsmen and draftswomen to undertake this work. So if we can do it collectively, this will make a huge contribution. We've undertaken that with the UNFCCC, the UN Environmental Agency, and ourselves. So lawyers have come together from across the piece to do something which is of real interest. And that will be found on the Commonwealth's new Office of Civil and Criminal Justice Reform, because we're not just doing this in terms of climate change legislation, but we're looking at how legislation right across the board from the 52 countries can be brought together under one umbrella and shared so that we know what works there too. So there is a lot for us to do. The small states may be small, but we're also mighty. And there's some pretty smart people around the Commonwealth. And I think we're hoping that the summit, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, will see the rebirth of a smarter Commonwealth.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Russell, did you want to pop in?
Just quickly, I mean, that was it's very interesting, Secretary General. We, for Australia, we're also very focused on climate change and oceans being a big part of the Commonwealth meeting. And for Australia, we've actually, your point about expertise and learning is really important. We, in Australia, we have this idea that it's, we need to be making sure that finance continues to flow, but it needs to be effective. It needs to be going to the right people at the right time and having an impact. And so to help us do that, we've just finished a year-long evaluation of all of our climate change programs over the last 5 years. They're meant to be sending me the draft while I'm here, but I haven't seen it yet. But I think it's for the flight home. But I do think that that's really important, because what I have seen of it, there's a lot of our programs which haven't been successful and haven't worked, and we have to learn from those and make sure that our climate programs going forward are learning from those, not mistakes, but learning from that experience and making sure that our programs going forward are effective and that we're using the climate finance that is out there to the best of its ability. So that's a really big focus for us, and we're happy to share that evaluation at the Commonwealth meeting. The other thing is oceans. Oceans are very important for Australia as well as the rest of the Commonwealth, and we understand in the Pacific now we're starting to not talk about small island developing states, but big ocean states, which I think is a nice rethinking about those states and what it means. And for us, Australia, oceans and blue carbon are sort of very interesting things for us in this space. So I'm looking forward to that. And the toolkit, I think, sounds like an excellent idea, because we often come across this issue of countries not having enough sort of legal expertise to translate this work. And so there's some, I think, from Australia's point of view, some very important things there that we can share. I think really, Melanie, very good questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for starting us off. And I've seen lots of hands being raised, so I'm going to whip through the questions as quickly as possible. If you just identify yourself and your question, please.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Spieth, National Population Commission, Nigeria. My question is this. Nigeria is a member of the Commonwealth, and it's quite interesting to learn how you've put this piece together. And I also was trying to listen when the presentations were going on to hear about Nigeria and the devastation of climate change. Of recent was the flood in Benue State, River State, and some other places in Nigeria. We have been devastated by climate change impact. And I didn't really hear about Nigeria. And also, I heard about 17 countries had benefited from the HERB. My question is, how can we, the Nigerian people, also be part of this process? And for us, the common man in Nigeria who has been impacted by climate change, also benefit from this process. Thank you.
May I ask for another question?
Just to follow up on what our sister from Nigeria said, my name is Bramley. I work with a consulting firm called Route 2 in London, but I'm from Northeast India. What I would like to know from our member states is, what is the role of bigger states like India helping smaller states within the Commonwealth across the border, like Bangladesh or Bhutan or Nepal in the region, talking about linking ecosystems. I come from the mountain ecosystem, working to restore cloud forests in the Himalayas, but after Burma opens its borders in 2012, I crossed the border and went down south to the mangroves to help the people that got hit by Cyclone Nargis in 2008 to restore mangrove ecosystems. And since then, we've planted 3 million trees with young people of that country who had nothing before to build resilience, especially for big island nations. So the technology exists where we are working with an Oxford-based company that can plant 100,000 trees a day. So I raised some money and we're going to Myanmar next week because...
So sorry, sir, what's your question?
The question is, can we create these kind of... is there any stories within big states like Australia or Canada or the United Kingdom working with smaller countries, bilateral or trilateral, north, south, 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 to exchange these kind of best practices in the context of engaging young people who are going to take the brunt of the heat in productive employment opportunities that are climate resilient to build communities?
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a third question, which is from Dr. Gomez, please.
Not a question so much, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity of saying on behalf of the ACP how much congratulations to the Commonwealth Secretariat, the climate finance support, and we do plan under the intra-ACP Global Climate Change Alliance to be making available some resources, substantial financial resources, to ensure that other countries such as Nigeria and other countries in the ACP that are not being able to benefit, but this is tremendously important work and we will be fully supportive of it, certainly.
Right, can I just ask you to hand the microphone to the back so that we get a question, and then I'll take, let's answer those 3 questions, and then we'll come back to some more. Honestly, I'll try to get to you as soon as I can.
Thank you. My name is Uzama Kawamara. I'm with Atkins in the UK, Senior Climate Finance Specialist. Very quick questions for Bilal. We've heard that 17 countries applied for support, but you're working with 7. Could you let us know the criteria for the selection of these 7? And then you talked about institutional capacity building, which is great. And you mentioned that the national advisors are deployed, work with the institutions, and then they go. How long do they stay with these institutions? What's the time frame such that this capacity can actually be concrete enough for them to carry on after the international experts leave? And what's the cycle? Do you have a cycle? Again, what happens to the experts when they go? Having garnered this knowledge, would you get them back for the cycle for the other countries that...
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So let's take the first question. Nigeria, please.
I hope you noticed that when I was opening, I talked about all regions of the Commonwealth. There is virtually no country in our Commonwealth which has not been adversely affected. And therefore I spoke about the mudslides in Sierra Leone just to identify a place in Africa which is indicative of African pain. Places in India and Bangladesh, etc., to emphasize that Asia has been affected, the Caribbean has been affected, and the Pacific. So it's really all of us. And this need, therefore, for us to work together as a whole Commonwealth, every single country, no one left behind, is of critical importance. The difficulty that we have is one of resourcing. So far, the main country who has been kind enough to assist us with the hub has been Australia. We would very much like other countries, particularly other countries who are adversely affected and who may have the resources to make a contribution to the hub, because the collective impact that we can have is going to be so much greater than the individual impact that we have if we try to struggle with these issues on our own. And I want to take this opportunity to thank my dear and much beloved colleague, Dr. P.I. Gomes, for his generosity and kindness. And I know that when we've made applications together for funds, we've been far more successful than when we've made applications on our own. I want to also assure the African colleagues present that I have been working very hard with the African Development Bank. And we are in the process of entering into an MOU, which will enable us to highlight and hopefully deliver services for the 18 African countries who are within the Commonwealth, but who are pivotal in terms of making a contribution to the wider AU family in terms of this issue. In addition, India has been helping greatly because India is participating in all the ministerial meetings that we are having, and we're looking at smart solutions for complex problems. I'm in the process now of doing two things. One is creating an innovation hub in the Commonwealth Secretariat so that we can, if you like, develop like a petri dish the issues that are being developed in many of our countries, and will give a platform for the 52 countries to showcase the innovations that they are undertaking, which could then be utilized and accessed by other member states. So I know, for example, that Australia has been in the process of creating an innovation hub. I also know that Canada is doing something similar, but that those other countries of our member states who do not have a hub have innovation. And so the ability to showcase all the things that work in one place, we think will be of huge resource. So we'll have north-south, south-south, west-east, east-west. We want the whole to be more than its sum parts. We've also are developing a regenerative model of development in order to reach climate change, which looks at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris commitments, and the new disruptive technologies that are coming on. I honestly believe that there's a lot of human genius around, and if we use that genius well, we'll be able to make a greater impact in mitigation and adaptation than we will without it. And I think we have to reverse the impact of climate on our people. We can't reverse climate change, but we can mitigate and adapt and reverse the impact on our people. In terms of young people, incredibly important because 60% of our young people, the Commonwealth, is under the age of 30. In some of our member states, 78%, for instance, in Uganda, are under the age of 30, and 59% are under the age of 18. So we have a very young Commonwealth, and we have created a Commonwealth youth group who are looking at climate change. And I've been with them yesterday, and they are, trust me, fantastic. And if we, the oldies, can't solve this problem, they're going to. So I do want to thank everyone. I'm going to let Bilal answer the questions in relation to the advisors, but just to say, the only reason we haven't been able to appoint all of the advisors for all of the countries that have requested is not just finding them, it's the fact that we have not yet got enough money to do all that we would like to do. And that's why I said earlier, if there's anyone here who is burdened by money and doesn't know what to do with it, I have such a good use to which it could be put.
Before Bilal answers, can I just ask Ashwin just to answer that second question, which is the stories. What stories, great stories, can we tell in terms of what the Access Hub and the projects that we can do?
Thank you. I'll ask for help from my colleague, Mr. Siubadet, who's the one in charge of all the projects and at the Ministry of Environment.
Okay, we'll get a microphone. We'll get a microphone to him in a moment. Bilal, if you answer the question of how you get the finances.
Well, thank
Thank you. And very important questions. As the Secretary General already emphasized, I mean, there is no intention of leaving any country behind, because any and every country of the Commonwealth and outside the Commonwealth as well actually have been affected one way or the other by the adverse impacts of the climate change. So if we are not gone full scale so far, the only reason is the finances which we have available right now. So we have strategically planned everything and implemented everything. If you see these 7 countries which we selected, the one reason was those were the first group of the country who actually approached us and seek out help from us. And the second is those are all the small island state countries or the LDCs countries. So we prioritize the most climatically most vulnerable group of countries in order to provide this assistance. Your second question, we have the list, and the list is not closed or exhaustive. I mean, other countries, they are welcome to ask, and they will be placed in the list, and will be providing the assistance as we get more resources in our hands. Because the whole philosophy is based on the institutional strengthening, and based on it that once the institutions are strengthened and they're stable, then the project ideas and the project proposals are going to flow out of them. So, and that takes time. So we have actually consciously and judiciously, we have taken a hard job for ourselves. And based on that, we have provided the funding, and we have actually made the funding available for a slightly longer period of time. So our national advisors are placed, the initial contract is for 1 year, which is extended to the 2 years, based on the understanding that this is a reasonable amount of period in order to let the institutions to put on the path, and then mature and evolve from that point onwards. So it's kind of, many of the decisions have actually been driven out of the funding which is available to us. We don't operate like cycles, like other funding institutions. So we are approachable and accessible and open to all the group countries, member countries all the time, and you can engage with us. I will be providing some contact information, so you can engage with us, and then we will lead the process from that point onwards.
Thank you so much. Thank you. If I could just ask briefly for Mauritius.
Yeah. Thank you for this part of the question. Now, what I can share is that as part of one of the good things that we've observed, we believe that with the help of the national advisors, now we are being able to make bridges, bridges with so many partners, which normally traditionally will just come or will just ask, when consultant comes. But when we have the national advisor there, they're always there to build up slowly, gradually the process of making those kind of partnership become more durable with those private partners, with the youth, with the other various communities, actually which are normally involved in crystallizing, I would say. And one good thing is, I'm not going to kind of, it's always good in saying, the proof is in eating the pudding once it is made. But one good thing is we've already crystallized 5 proposals that over the quite short time, this is just to give you the KPI, to showcase how we are working with advisors in making things work more faster.
Thank you very much indeed. We're running out of time. Let's take on that side of the house, please. 3 quick questions, please.
Hello. So I'm Lion from Regional Resource Center for Asia and the Pacific. I come from Bangkok. We represent the Secretariat of Climate Change Asia Initiative, who is also in the business of building capacities to access and manage climate finance. So I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Bilal. And my question goes like, what are the approaches and activities that the Hub is actually doing in developing bankable project proposals from a service provider standpoint?
Thank you. That's the first question.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariam Williams. I'm with the South Center. I want to thank the panel and thank the Madam for your presence here today. This being Gender Day, and now we're in sight of a SBI conclusion around Gender Action Plan. I wanted to raise the question of gender and climate finance and also linking gender budgets. I know, Madam, that you're very interested in the subject because one of your first act was the Women Leaders meeting for the Commonwealth, and you also had one of your big meeting with the Women's Ministers meeting. So I'm interested to see how are you linking gender and climate finance, and how are you, if your advisor are also working with the Ministry of Finance to start to begin the process of tracking climate finance and linking gender budgets and climate financing.
Thank you. And there's a final question for the moment.
Hi everyone, my name is Karuna Rana and I'm from Mauritius, but I'm also the coordinator of the Commonwealth Youth Climate Change Network. I just want to say thank you because the steering committee has now a youth representative on it, and I'm sure this is going to facilitate access to funding that also many youth organizations and youth-led projects need. So I just wanted to say thank you and looking forward to working together.
Thank you very much indeed. So 2 quick questions then, please. If you could. You switch the mic.
Do you know, I was so glad that the network's here. I kept on smiling so much that I think I forgot the 2 questions. Just wanted to say that one of the things that we're trying to do is to have systemic issues which can be applied more broadly. So we're working very hard on making sure that what we're doing really works very well. And if I can remember what the other questions are, I'll come back to them. Gender. Oh, gender. We are absolutely mainstreaming gender. You'll see that there is, not only is it gender today, but what we have done is make sure that gender is fed into all the work that is done right away across the Commonwealth. And I hope you noticed that when Mauritius was outlining the role that is given to the advisors, gender was right in there. So it's one of my top priorities, and you may have noticed that I'm sort of, I think, female.
Just repeat your question again, sir, very quickly. No, just stand up and just repeat your question.
You got the question?
I'm fine, yeah.
Okay, great.
I mean, this is most commonly asked question, so you don't have to repeat it one more time. Okay, what we're doing with developing implementable and bankable projects, and because sometimes I say that the bankability of the projects is kind of overused or to the extent of abused term. Nevertheless, it's important because we're talking about the finance, we're talking about bringing the finance into the climate change arena. So it's very important the projects are sustainable, financially sustainable. What we have done it as SG have been emphasizing in a very, very practical way. So we have not really engaged ourselves in a big theoretical discussion, but we have taken the criteria, the investment criteria of different climate financial institutions, and we have broken that down into small pieces and into the tools and applications which our national advisors are actually handing over, applying on the ground in designing the different project proposals. And that is exactly the reason I'm very happy that my colleague from Mauritius, that in a merely 5 months period of time, they were able to put together 5 project proposals. And while I have this the space and mic, we have actually done several more proposals in Swaziland, in Namibia, in Antigua and Barbuda as well. So because we are not engaging in very theoretical discussions, but actually doing things in a much more practical way. And we have taken the financial instruments, break them down into applications, and apply them into the project proposals.
Thank you very much. Final 3 questions from that side of the room, please.
Hi, thank you for... Is it on? Okay, my name is Dr. Adrian Fenton. I am the National Adaptation Plan Advisor for the Government of Fiji. I wanted to ask a question about bankability, which often is in the eyes of the beholder, in that it's often simply a matter of opinion, whether it's about scalability, whether it's about leveraging the private sector. I believe that for small island developing states such as Fiji, it will have a specific meaning. I just wondered whether you could briefly summarize in a sentence or 2 what really your impression of what bankability means for small island developing states.
Thank you. Can we just go to the gentleman with the blue jacket, and then the final question will be for that gentleman over there.
Hello, my name is Tim Clark. I'm a former European Union ambassador, now an ambassador for the Global Eco-Village Network. A huge respect for the tremendous initiatives taken here to combat climate change. But, as they say, prevention is always better than cure. I had the privilege in Marrakesh to have a meeting with the Right Honourable Patricia of Scotland. And my question to you is, what has been done upstream in terms of declaring zero carbon targets and so on for Commonwealth countries, for regions, for the Caribbean, the Pacific, and so on? And I honour also the announcement you just made that there'll be an innovation centre. You've met my colleague Albert Bates, who's in the room here, who's a world leader on biochar. So just what is balancing what's been done to address the effects with upstream work on prevention?
Thank you very much indeed. And the final question, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Tariq Manukri. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Change Impact Study Center in Pakistan. My main question, well, first of all, let me just reinforce
We're running out of time, sir.
what a friend from Nigeria said. Every country has a problem. Pakistan is one of the most affected countries of climate change. And so we do hope that there will be a much more collaboration. I do congratulate you very much for the step you've taken and the innovative thing. The idea of the toolkit and the success and the failures, the success and failure stories, I think that's a brilliant idea. The problem is that people learn when they do it themselves. And, a question to the Honorable Secretary General is, how are you getting the countries involved? I would very much like to see you visit Pakistan, talk to the Prime Minister, get a process started so that we have our internal process in that regard.
Thank you.
May I just finish this? And having done work on capacity building, I also greatly appreciate this idea of twinning, having people for a long time. 1 to 2 years is not enough. And I don't know what you have longer term plans of it. Number two, what is your plan for sustainability? How do you assess success? I mean, I would see that, if people can do it themselves, how do you assess the success or failure of your initiative? And finally, are there ways in which institutions, particularly research institutions, can help by actually examining the way you're doing things and trying to spread it to other countries?
Okay, so three questions then. First of all, bankability. Second of all, carbon zero. And third of all, the sustainability question, please.
Ability, and I'll do the others.
Yeah, I mean, very rightly, the bankability depends on the project developers and depends on a country-to-country level and depends on the project context as well. I think for me and I mean to a practice level as well, the bankability is depending on the scale of the project and the project is able to financially sustain itself. Now, this is very different from the project being commercially viable. So it does not necessarily have to be, especially when we're talking about the adaptation project, talking about the public goods projects. Traditionally, they are not commercially viable, and it does not have to be. But they have to be financially sustainable, and that depends on the financial architecture, the way the project has been put together. We can carry on this discussion on the coffee.
Which is a great idea.
Can I just say that there is another criteria for me, and that is all of our countries are desperate in terms of finding ways to turn the clock back, all of them without exception. One of the most important things we have to do is to help our countries persuade the funders that the things that they are committed to do will in fact have the impact reduced. That is what for me is truly bankability. And we need to be able to say to the Green Fund and others, if you give us this money, you will be able to see real resilience delivered on the ground for people who need it. That's the bottom line. The rest, I'm afraid, is sophistry. The issues in relation to prevention, absolutely key. We've had 3 substantive meetings of professional experts who are totally committed to reversing the impact on climate. And we were honoured to have Alan Bates and others participate with us. We had climatologists, oceanologists, biomimicrysts, people who were dealing with permaculture, people who were doing circular economy, symbiotic economy. And through those meetings, we came up with the regenerative model of development, which will be the preventer. So it is not just adaptation, mitigation, but how do we create an ecosystem, an eco-culture, which is curative and supportive of sustainable development per se. And that is what we in the Commonwealth are trying to do with our regenerative model development. And the template that we're giving our advisors is when they are looking at sustainable projects, they build in this regenerative modeling into the solutions that they are helping countries to create. So we're not just trying to stop the problems of today, we're trying to prevent the problems of tomorrow and making sure that our youth network are intimately involved, because we have to take a cultural change, not just in relation to this generation, but to make sure that those born today will not abuse the earth and our oceans in the way in which we have ourselves, mainly unknowingly, done so. Because we can no longer say we don't understand the impact of what we do. So that's the upstream work that we're absolutely committed to. As far as Pakistan is concerned, I'm really hoping to visit. We need the expertise of everyone. We're working with the ACU, the Association of Commonwealth Universities. We're working with climatologists and oceanologists all the way across the Commonwealth. So if there are any specialists who have not yet become engaged in this work, we would be delighted if you signed up to help us deliver it, because we need people on the ground who understand the regenerative model of development, who are committed to it, and will then nationally, regionally, help it to become a reality. And we are looking to create a total cultural change in the way in which we work. And we're planning for sustainability.
I take my life in my hands because I'm stopping my boss from talking, and I apologise for that. There'll be plenty of time in the refreshments, but may I thank you all, and may I extend your thanks to the panel for this very, very interesting discussion. Thank you, everybody.